Suddenly, we began to see a strange light in the sky, which was maneuvering in a very erratic pattern. This light began flying along beside us and did this for about 30 miles until we came to an area known as Indian Head. And at that place, this light left the top of the mountain, came out over the highway, and stopped in midair directly in front of us. Barney jumped out of the car with the binoculars in an attempt to try to identify this craft. Because we knew nothing about UFOs at the time. Barney walked towards it, looking up through the binoculars, and he could see a red light on each side and figures standing behind the double row of windows. He panicked and he ran back to the car saying they planned to capture us and we had to get out of there. And we went speeding down the highway. And at that point, we heard beeping sounds and the car vibrated. By the time we had arrived at the craft, I was fighting. I was in a panic. They just held me. When I asked the leader where he was from, I said, I know you're not from this planet. I was taken into the first room, Barney into the second room, where we were given, as the leader, as I call him, gave us testing. There were 11 beings, and for purposes of identification, I called one the leader, because he seemed to be in charge of the project of doing this testing, and he was the only one who spoke English. Then there was the examiner, who did the testing, and then there were 9 others we called crew members. They stayed outside the room in the corridor. Our examinations were very much similar in that with both Barney and I, they checked our eyes, ears, nose, throat, took samples of our hair, fingernail, and they scraped our skin. With me, they touched my body with little points on wires. He said he was checking my nervous system. And then they attempted to insert a needle-like instrument in my navel. I objected that it would hurt, and he said it shouldn't hurt. When he did this, it caused a great deal of pain. He said it was a pregnancy test, and I said, well, that's no pregnancy test here. At this point, the examiner came running back into the room and opened my mouth and started tugging at my teeth. And I said to the leader, what is he doing? And he said, we're very, very puzzled. Why are Barney's teeth removable and yours are not? At that point, we left the craft and went back to the car, and we stood there by the car and we watched the craft leave. We saw it become surrounded by a fiery, revolving mass of some kind. We could see the UFO in the middle of this. And it lifted up, dipped down, went right straight up, and was gone. Now, when we arrived home, we had many puzzles. The tops of Barney's shoes were scuffed. Our watches had stopped functioning. There were highly polished spots in the trunk of the car. But the biggest mystery of all was the fact that it had taken us 7 hours to drive 190 miles.
I remember looking at the clock, so I was thinking it was about 20 past 5:30, because I thought, I've got my ironing to do, I need to get home.
Benjamin was in the furthest corner of the car, and my nana was in just behind me.
We remember commenting on the chimneys. The silhouette of the chimneys really stood out against the sky. You know, when I think about it, that's the last thing I can remember. The next thing I remember is just seeing this awesome bright light.
I saw it going up, and then it hovered right above the car.
It doesn't make sense even, you know, when I talk about it, but we all felt that it was like just this absolutely overwhelming love that you just felt from it.
You'd be happy just to sit there and look at it forever, or just want it to land and go away with it. Yeah. And leave everything else behind. It was hovering for a bit and came in front of the car and hovered, then all of a sudden it shot off.
Then it was like, all of a sudden, and then I was driving and the noise was back.
You felt this feeling of loss when it had gone, because you wanted that feeling that it gave you.
I want it to be an honest account, you know, if I do remember.
How do you feel?
Happy. It's no walls, it's just black everywhere. It's like standing in the middle of space. There's big bright light here, right in front of me. That's high, and that's watching what the little ones are doing, the smaller ones going round and looking at us and talking to each other. They think the boys are funny. They think they're funny. I can hear laughing now, the children are laughing, they're really giggling. I'm scared for the children. But the light's there and it's just telling me it's fine and we're not going to hurt them. They're your children. They're your children, yeah, that's fine.
One of the most controversial aspects of the UFO phenomenon and its effect on our society are claims of interaction with UFO occupants and tales of being abducted by aliens. Perhaps the most convincing testimony comes from Travis Walton of Snowflake, Arizona.
This was on November 5th, 1975. I was working with a crew of men in the woods, and we left the area. We'd worked late that night. It was getting dark. And as we were leaving down this dirt road way back in the woods, we saw a large glowing object near the road. Well, we stopped the truck and I got out, went up to it for a closer look. I thought that this thing was just going to shoot right off, and then, I hurried towards it thinking, it'll be gone before I even get close enough to see it that well. But it didn't leave. It started to move and the sound got louder. So I jumped down behind the end of a log there, and I decided I better get out of there. And I raised up, turned to go, and at that instant I just felt a numbing shock. I blacked out. Men in the truck said they saw a beam of energy come out of the craft and hit me in the upper body, knocked me through the air. When I regained consciousness, I was on board the craft, apparently. I came to kind of slowly. I was kind of groggy. I didn't regain consciousness real quickly, but when I finally got where I could see, I saw these creatures standing over me. And I became hysterical instantly. I knocked them back and jumped away from them. They started towards me. I screamed and made threatening gestures, and they stopped and turned and left this room. They had gone to the right, so I ran down to the left. It was down a curving hallway. I ran by some other doors, and I came to another door, and I kind of got to control myself a little bit. I kind of panicked there for a minute, but I stopped, went in this room. It was a very strange room. You could see the stars projected on the walls, or maybe you could see them through maybe some kind of a viewing screen or something. I don't know. But there was a chair in the middle of this room that had some controls on it, and I went up to that and tried to see if I could figure a way to open a door or get out of there or something. Another being came in at that point. The first creatures that I saw were very, very different from us. They were short, less than 5 feet in height. They had large, bulging craniums, kind of a chalky white look to their appearance, very large eyes. He took me out of that room that this was parked in, down a hallway to a smaller room where there were some other people like him, and they put me down on a table, and I struggled with him, and I was knocked out, made unconscious with a kind of an oxygen mask-like device. And the next thing I know, I wake up on the road.
I woke up and I was not in my bed any longer. I was standing in what I thought was an elevator. I was paralyzed. I had no idea how I could have been taken from my bed in the middle of the night and not known it and just appeared in this elevator, but that was the case. I was pushed into a room that I describe as a large hospital ward. There were tiny little tables about 1.5 feet tall all through this hospital ward, and there were unconscious human beings laying on all of these tables, and there were these little short off-white beings, naked guys with big black eyes doing things to these people on these tables. I was taken into a small room, and I was presented a little girl about 2 years old, and she was beautiful. She was very human looking. She had big blue eyes and long blonde hair, but she lacked emotion. And they presented this child to me, and they said to me, "Isn't she a beautiful baby?" And telepathically, they were communicating to me that it was my child. And I was absolutely in shock. I'm in this room, and I'm seeing this 2-year-old little girl, and they're telling me it's mine, and I'm saying, "You're crazy. This isn't mine. It can't be mine. I don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to participate in this." I know how crazy it sounds for a woman to say she's been implanted with an alien fetus. I'm an intelligent woman. I'm highly educated. I know how the world perceives it, but I'm sorry. It's the truth.
While I was standing there, I saw these lights, moving from right to left across the sky. That's when I felt this fear, I better call the base.
Oh, Mr. Matthews? Yes, sir. Yes, I've been here all the time.
When I called the base again, they asked me where I've been, and he told me, he says, "Well, we sent a truck down there already." And I says, "Well, I've been standing here waiting, and no one's been by here." Under hypnosis, I observed in the sky 3 lights moving in this direction. They hovered over here, and the red one came at me so fast. I can see some light come from a crack. It's like a ramp opens down, and I can see a lot of light come out of there. I walked up to it, walked up the ramp, and I looked inside, and I saw 4 beings sitting over here on the left. There was 2 sitting on the right, and the place reminded me of a doctor's office.
Every single case, he came out with a scenario which was exactly like the other scenarios. They're taken into a craft, a landed UFO, put on a table, clothes are removed, samples are taken during that time, sometimes blood samples, often skin scrapings, and very often sperm and ova samples. The descriptions that we're getting of UFO occupants, about 85% are extremely similar. The figures are little, between 3.5 and 5 feet tall, extremely slender. They have a grayish-white skin. They have very large craniums. The eyes are often very, very black. The mouth is a slit, which never seems to move, and there's no ears. I'm the first one to admit how outrageous all of this is. The people to whom it happens also say, this just can't happen.
I went through all my life, doubting my sanity, wondering whether or not these things have occurred.